toughest part is to, convince yourself that this is worth telling.
This is worth making. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you and but at that point it's just you and your story.
Huh.
And if you're not confident about this story, if you're not passionate about it, other people can see through it. That ये तो career बनाने के लिए बना रहा है ये film. Because first films are very, very important. It sort of defines the direction you take. So you have to put everything in it, and it has to be something that you are really, really wanting to tell to people. It's not just एक crime thriller बनाता हूँ या एक crime thriller बनाता हूँ और एक horror film बनाता हूँ. So it has to really come from within you. So I think those things are the tougher parts of filmmaking. Trying to figure out a subject like this, which you're really, really passionate about, and you have a vision for telling the story, which others may have also done. It doesn't matter. This is your vision of telling the same story.
Bhaskar, I wish to start off by asking you a little bit about your formative years and where did you grow up? What was growing up like? What are the kind of influences that were around you that sort of had an impact on you that sometimes we don't even realize growing up? Like this could be in the form of films or books or just those random things that impact us subconsciously and lead us to become what we are today. Like what are some of the influences that you had while growing up wherever you did?
Well, I was born in Jorhat, which is like a town in what we say Upper Assam, which is, Assam is like a long state. If Kerala were placed horizontal, it will be a little bit like Assam. So at the other end of Assam are these little, Assamese towns called Dibrugarh, Jorhat. So Jorhat is one of them, and I was born in Jorhat town, but I live in a small town called Dergaon, which is in the same district, pretty much. And I left Assam when I was 7 to, this was in the 80s, so militancy was picking up there, and my parents were not very happy with the situation there for kids to grow up in. So, I was sent to a boarding school in Chhattisgarh, which is now Chhattisgarh. Back then it was still Madhya Pradesh, in Raipur. So I pretty much grew up in Raipur. So I was only nominally Assamese. And then after that, of course, I came to Delhi. I did my history honors degree in Delhi University. Then I went to England. I did my MA in film. So I was, I was just nominally Assamese till I started making my first film, Kothanodi. And it's like, and since then I've noticed that my work has become better. All this while, I was functioning in Bombay as a writer. I was writing television, and that's like, it sounds great, but television writing is just like a very clerical job. Back then it used to be like that, daily, not soaps, but serials. So I sort of, I realized that, it's important for you to understand who you are, where you come from, what your roots are, for you to be effective as an artist, as a writer or a filmmaker or a musician. So I got that sort of, I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but that, that understanding when I started working on my first feature film, Kothanodi. So, and if you talk about influences, I used to read a lot. I didn't watch too many films, but I read a lot because, our school had a very well-stocked library. And I didn't mean that I read Charles Dickens or all the classics. I read, mostly like, Frederick Forsyth, like these espionage novels and, and a lot of Westerns, cowboy novels. I still sit, with my back against the wall, wherever I sit. That's something I learned from Western novels. The gunslinger's always got his back to the wall so that nobody can shoot him from behind. So, I read a lot, and I was, super, I started out thinking that I'm going to be India's youngest published poet. This is when I was 15. I said, yeah, my poetry is so good, man, you got to get it published and all. But of course, now if you read them, they're like, yeah, But that's how it is, I had, some delusions that, okay, maybe I should, So I knew that I'm going to do something, get into this creative field as a writer, novelist, or as, as a filmmaker, film writer, whatever it is. But I knew I was not going to be doing some random office job, which I ended up doing for a few years in my life. But so most of my influences were books rather than films. And I seriously got exposure to cinema in my MA degree in England when I was in the University of Reading. And I saw very, very, like films that are really far out there, in the 60s, when it was, getting possible in America to, purchase your own Super 8 camera and, people start shooting stuff. So that really opened my mind a lot. And the plan was never to make films. The plan was to become a film academic. But I don't know. I just couldn't continue studying in England, pursuing my film studies. So I got back to India, did some documentaries, dabbled in the .com world for a while, and then Bollywood. I tried my Bollywood thing, and then Assamese cinema.
That's lovely. I think one thing you said about self-delusion, I was listening to this podcast recently, jahan pe one of the guests had told that self-delusion is a prerequisite for success. Like if you are not deluded with your own understanding of yourself, you can, not really know yourself or get anywhere in that sense.
But there's a very thin line between delusion and ego. So because I feel the artist, singular sin, the biggest sin I think for an artist to have is to have a huge ego. I mean, the idea is to just destroy your ego, so that your whatever work of art you're doing, it becomes central.
So all of us have certain narratives that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and we tell about ourselves to others as well. This is my journey, this is the way I've lived, and all of that. But like, I'm borrowing this question from somewhere, but like everybody, I think, has sort of said this, before this BC and AD moment for ourselves. Like, what is this, like life completely changed after this moment, and I entered my AD era, sort of a thing. So, in your understanding of yourself and whatever you have lived till now, what is that BC AD moment for you, which sort of changed the way? Like, if ye nahi hua hota, to I think it would have been very different for me. What is that moment according to you, for you?
I would have to say at the current stage I'm in my life, things may change. This thing might change later on. But I think it was when I decided to quit Bollywood, and try to strike out on my own, do a film in my own language. So I think, and that's so one of the most visible signs is I had a beard. Before that, I didn't have a beard. And just half a schedule of shooting a film in a very, in a very thin budget. And it's like, it was so tight, the schedule, that you had to make a choice. Either you take a dump or you shave. So I thought, maybe that big shit is more important than shaving. So I sort of grew up, not as in I was already grown up, but I grew up as a person figuring out what exactly do I want to do, what do I want to say, and what is my art going to be like. So all those epiphanies sort of came when I was shooting my first film. So I would have to say at this point, that is when I had my the AD moment that you're talking about.
Right. And as you said, you did your undergrad in history, if I'm not wrong, right? Correct. So like, what does having an understanding of just our past or just about and the environment around us, how does that help you in the way you create stories and how you understand the world around you? Like, how does that help you in filmmaking per se, having an academic knowledge in some other academic field, basically? How does that help you in filmmaking?
Well, I don't know. This is all just conjecture in my head. It's not something. I just feel that the grounding in the liberal arts is sort of very, very important for an artist. Okay, I interact a lot with filmmakers and writers, and the bulk of them, the majority of them, are basically from their engineering or commerce backgrounds, because this is a very common story in India. Because most of the parents in the 80s, 90s, they just push their kids towards basic education. Naukri milti hai. So we study. In fact, one writer I'm working with, he told me his school's motto was, "You learn to earn." That is like so messed up. So a grounding in liberal arts teaches you, some things that your education in sciences, the way it is imparted, at least at the undergraduate level. I'm not talking about people who are doing, PhDs in mathematics or other sciences. I'm talking about these people who are, the factory-produced employees, So they, it's like it's learning by rote. It's not questioning authority. What is there in the formula is. So this is very. It just makes you, very passive. But studying subjects like history or English or philosophy, you understand that there is no one absolute. Like there is no formula. Okay, like it depends. The same formula may work in one context, it may not in this other context. So context is very important to understand the world around us, and that I feel is sorely lacking, and it shows in in the art that you put out. So I guess the idea is to not to get knowledge of a particular subject, but just to understand that every like if I would say it in Hindi, har satya ka ek tathya hota hai. The such doesn't exist in isolation, or just because somebody said this is it, right? So the more you learn to question, not to oppose, but just for your own understanding. It really helps you in telling your story honestly, and that really matters. You have to be honest when you're communicating your whatever art you're doing.
Talking a little bit about Aamis specifically now, with the how the writing went by, like how the ideating of the story went by, like what came first for you? Was it the characters and their intricacies that came first for you, or was it a certain theme that you wanted to explore and expand upon, and that led to the characters becoming what they were? Like what started first?
I don't know, man. Over the years, I've answered this question in many different ways in many different forums, just like this. I really don't know which one is true anymore. But currently,
Let's
today,
try a different way this time.
I'm presently in Delhi. So I was in Delhi at that time. I was meeting. I was doing some documentary for some corporate client. I was meeting them in some. I think it was in Nehru Place, some mall. So and I just observed two people eating, and I just occurred to me that touching is such an important part of a romance. When you fall in love with someone, you want to touch that person. But what are the alternative ways of achieving the same thing without physical touching? So it occurred to me that why not? Why not? Why can't you sort of enter each other through the mouth? I mean, like as food, instead of doing the same thing sexually through your sexual organs. So it was just this, and over the next 2 years, I thought about it off and on. I was doing other things, I was making my film. And then after my first film, Kothanodi, was released, I was discussing this with Sham, who was eventually, now me and Sham run Metanomy, the studio that I founded. And he loved the idea. So we did, that's when we started exploring it and putting in characters, adding flesh to it. So there are many ideas like this roaming around in my head, like for years now. So you never know when something might click and a narrative may be fashioned out of it.
So I want to ask, how risky was it? Firstly, in your head, when you thought, okay, let me give life to the script, and secondly, how did you expect the movie to do, and did it fall under your expectations criteria?
Well, Abdul, to tell you frankly, this film was conceived in 2018, 2017, when things started. We found a producer interested in putting in money in this subject. We are standing now in 2022, right? And I think today I wouldn't have made a film like this. It is just a commentary on the way the downhill descent of this country. And, and even then I knew, if you're talking about, the offense industry is in hyperdrive right now. But back then, we had this thing, like why are we not crossing the taboo of beef? And, so beef and pork, these two things are conspicuously missing in the film. So maybe these are just subconscious decisions because, I am a politically aware person. So, and there is no question of my politics not seeping into whatever art I do. It happens to everybody. Basically, even an artist without political vision is, I don't know, just a propagandist, I guess. So it was risky in a sense that, I knew what to avoid. But because, these things are not important for me, actually. Because even though I keep saying I'm a political person, like I'm sure all of us are, but, this story is not a political story. I didn't want to make a statement on weed eating or whatever in this film. I would have made some other kind of film. This is a film about these two people, and it's just such a, the whole narrative, the whole setting just sort of drew me in, and I started feeling very sorry for them, even before I started writing the script. So I thought, I wanted to make this about them, and not like do something risky, like putting in deliberately stuff which will rile people up, because I wanted people to focus on their story and what happens to them and feel sorry for them like I did when I first thought about them and their story.
When you were making this movie, were you thinking that people may perceive it in a different way? And as a filmmaker, what was your thought? I don't want people to perceive it wrongly, let's say. And am I risking it by giving people a complete south towards kind of absorbing a love story? So what was it risky in that sense as a filmmaker? I'm asking.
No, like I said, it's just about these two people and an unusual sort of story. This is not about what they're eating and how they're eating it. The focus is not on what they're eating. The focus is on what is happening to them after they eat whatever they eat. So it's on them. The focus is on them. It's on what happens to them after they've ingested. Not the ingestion is not so important. So there's not too much time spent on close-ups of the food and stuff. It's just suggestive mostly. Because that is not really the story. The story is what happens to them after.
So actually, when the story was being it's developing, I kind of was getting a feeling like that it's going to like when it came to know about this fact that the doctor loves the human flesh, and and we had this development over the story that uh, someone was basically had killed a rooster in his child age. So I was getting a feeling that at the end it might end up happening that she might kill him or something. So was this an alternate story that you thought of, or was this the ending you thought of from like the starting, that the that like how to know that, right?
Yeah. It was very clear in my head that they will not kill each other because then it will become a predictable thing. It'll be predictability. But the other option was, of course, see, the thing is that when a lot of people ask me this question is why is he murdering? I don't know if everybody's seen the film here, but this is a spoiler. Why is he murdering a rickshawala?
Yeah.
So because the thing is that they are easy to disappear. Such kind of people, rickshawalas, radiowalas, all the people who are the underclass, who live on the footpath. Nobody's going to miss them immediately, and the police, it's not going to be a priority case. If you kill someone who is a student of the university, or a person who has a home, who has a family, middle class family, so you're more prone to get caught. So his mind became that of a hunter. So if you have to hunt, what kind of prey will you hunt so that you don't get caught or get into trouble, right? So that is why we decided to go with something like this. And no, at no point did we think that they'll just consume each other completely, totally. That'll be mad.
We know that something wrong has happened, like he has killed someone, but that scene where she is touching her fingers, the last scene, actually as an audience it's like so awkwardly satisfying for us. We know something wrong has happened, but yeah, finally they could touch each other. So no, I don't know, that's like so brilliantly done. I was really happy to watch that movie because that was so awkwardly satisfying for me. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
It's also one of those moments when you realize if they'd only done this before, all of this wouldn't have happened.
yeah.
What is this big taboo, about like just touching someone?
Yeah, correct.
Our cultures are, our communities are structured like that, so it's very repressive.
I watched the movie twice. I mean, at least आज आधी और देख ली थी because it's very haunting. I mean, you kind of want to watch it again and you don't want to because of the ending. I have the question mostly regarding the story of the movie. A was the inspiration, I mean, you told about the inspiration behind the movie, but also was it the idea like the movie Hannibal, was it that was the inspiration behind the script? जैसे कि vampires की movies होती है या फिर Hannibal की movie है. Why I'm mentioning vampires is this one scene where Nirmali is looking at this roasting chicken and she just smiles at it in a very evil way. So you can think of okay, एकदम से ऐसा लगता है कि vampire का vibe आता है. And the next thing is, if you were talking about intimacy without touching each other, and that's true, they find it this weird grotesque way. But when Nirmali cooks food for him, he pukes. तो उसके behind का मैंने reason क्या था?
हाँ, तो पहली बात तो what you're talking about is Hannibal, and basically this kind of, it's a genre of cinema. It's not even a genre, it's a sub-genre of horror. Like you have in horror zombie cinema. So yes, the same kind of tropes are used in all this cinema. So maybe Hannibal, Aamis, these are all in this sub-genre of horror. It deals with cannibalism, themes of cannibalism. It's been happening in cinema for a long time. So, but what I thought I had carefully, because I have seen most of these films over years, and I was very keen to avoid falling into the same trap, which is like focusing on the gore. So this and I think if I was a French filmmaker, Aamis would have been far more gory. But हम लोग इंडिया में रहते हैं और यहाँ की सोसाइटी जो है थोड़ी सी डिप्रेसिव है. There's only so much we can show, and which works for me because it's always better to suggest than to show, because your imagination will immediately give you a picture in your head of whatever I'm suggesting, which will be far more scary than whatever I can show you on screen. So these are so I could say that this film fits into that kind of subgenre in terms of its themes. और सेकंड क्वेश्चन जो आपका था वो क्यों उसने क्यों उल्टी कर दी जब वो तो मैंने भी बहुत सोचा, बिकॉज मैंने लिख डाला, बट मैंने ये सोचा नहीं था कि ये क्यों ऐसा कर रहा है, बट मुझे लगा ये ऐसा करेगा. तो फिर then I realized that over the and I when the film was out, people are talking about it. This question used to come up often from audiences, and in a discussion with somebody, I realized what's happening here is this whole idea of there are certain kinds of men who do not want to cede control in a relationship. So maybe he is that kind of a man, where he controls it. So it's fine as long as he's the one leading up. But if she takes control, if a woman takes control in a relationship, they get turned off. This is a very at a very tame level. I'm saying, like it happens every day in life. It can happen to maybe one of your friends also. When she starts taking control of the relationship, the guy gets turned off. So maybe that's the kind of vibe I was trying to get at. That's
personally, I've recently started screenwriting a little bit, and what I've understood a little bit is that you need not have experienced everything that your characters might experience. That's a very interesting learning I personally have gotten. And matlab, one very interesting thing about the female protagonist of the film was that her sort of this hypocrisy that every character supposedly has as well, these double standards की आदमी मैं खा लूंगी but sex की बारे में बात करना is vulgar. Like she had said she's so vulgar while talking about that. So I mean, firstly my question is to do with how did the characters sort of develop for you? What was the brief to the actors like when you told the story to the actors? What was their reaction like? And matlab, how do you personally build empathy for such characters जो conventional wisdom से थोड़े अलग सोचते हैं? Like how do you relate to them on some of the other level? How do you make sure you're not judging them for their actions? Because when you're making the film, you have to make sure you are treating them in the most constructive manner possible and showing the story in the best manner possible. How does one come up with characters, and how does your thought process work around that?
Well, I think the brief I gave to Dima, if I remember correctly, I mean, it's been a while now, so I don't remember things clearly, but I do remember telling her to think of her character as that of a coke addict. The whole thing is, because it's an addiction that develops, it's a 1 in a million case. I told her, she's a doctor. So she says, how is it possible that, having just a little bit of meat can make us an addict? But I said, it may not be possible, but it is plausible. 5-6 grams of coke can just turn you into a raving addict. I doubt it. You'll have to have it over at least a week or two to get hooked to it. But I just said, so it's something like that, so approach a character like that. It's not, in trying to avoid wine at a party, you ended up snorting coke and you turn into an addict. Like how pathetic, So I wanted her to, approach the character like that, very rigid, very straight in her ways, typifying the picture of a middle class doctor in an Assamese community, progressive but also conservative and things like that. And nothing about her character in the beginning suggests that she is so weird. That but the thing is that she's not. It's just that she's just this 1 in a million person who just the meat had the same effect on her taste buds as what coke had to and just she be hooked to it. It's really sad. So that's the way I told her to approach it. And as regards Orko, who played Sumon's character, I told him, he was supposed to be more a roguish character, more Shana, what we say in Bombay. But this boy who came through the auditions, and he's such a gentle guy, he's such a zen person, that he made the character a little gentler than what we intended. And I was okay with it in the edit because I felt that made it even more creepy. He just was much more creepy because he's such a gentle and nice way he's talking. There's nothing roguish about him. There is no those looks he gives to her, lusty looks and all that, when they're together. It's just being a nice boy and just such a creepy guy, So yeah, so that's the kind of brief I gave them. I'm sure I've told them many things, but I just cannot recall anything else right now. How do you build empathy for the character? But I don't know, I didn't. You just honestly tell the story and not try to judge the actions of the character, because it's it may be that you may obviously, it is very, very important for you to have empathy for your characters and not necessarily sympathy all the time. But what is even more important is for the audience to have the same feeling. Because eventually you're writing or making the film for the audience, not for yourself. So to make sure that, generally accepted norms, which will, sort of character traits which will evoke, a sense of empathy in people. So, for instance, her peers, the characters' peers who are in the audience, late 30s, early 40s, female women, may see glimpses of themselves in her, which makes it easier for them to empathize with her actions towards the end. Of course, they will not like. I mean, she cannot be forgiven because it is a crime that they both conspire to do. But you still can feel sorry for the criminal. That is all. That was the intent, to just make the characters in such a way that people feel bad for them, and not like condemn them like they're doing on screen as criminals.
That's interesting. I think that last moment, that was the closing shot of the film. Was that a decision that you took बहुत पहले से? Did it come in the writing itself, like the fact that they will वो हाथ मिला लेंगे last में? Because it ends on such a weird note, like as Harshul was also saying, मतलब इतना awkwardly हम लोग भी feel कर रहे हैं as an audience also, like I'm feeling a little weird, creepy also, but I'm smiling also because they're together for some reason. The background music is also such that it's making me want to smile for them and happy for them. Like they're still together, and it also has that element of films like what like Sairat might have, or Titanic might have. They are sort of class boundaries ko beyond jaake they are trying to be together, and like everybody's against the two of them. So because we are generally on the conventional side, because that's just how we function as a society as well, they would be seen as villains as well. But because we have been following their journey, suddenly they are our heroes, and everybody else who is catching them as sort of villains. Like how did you build or make sure that वो film का जो love वाला situation है, angle है, वो शुरू से end तक वो gentle tenderness रहे film, despite all the other aspects that were there, which were more not exactly gross, but a little more out there. That's the right word to use.
No, I mean, it was the last frame of the film was imprinted in my head even before I started writing the story. When I was still developing it, I knew this is the way they have to touch once. And obviously, being a writer, I knew where they will touch at the end. Obviously, that's where the film will end. So I had the design of this scene in my head, much before I started actually committing it to paper. Either a story or script. And one thing I did in Aamis was, when we work in, if you go to a typical Assamese film set, there are not too many women hanging around. They're either actors or at the most at makeup. So I made sure that this is woman heavy unit. Where there is editor or the direction department, costume, makeup, assistant camera person. So I would talk to them because I didn't want this to be, the gaze had to be female in this story. It couldn't, because I am obviously a man. So there's the impulse to shoot a scene in a particular way, where you sort of objectify is it's subconsciously always there. I mean, obviously you can fight it, and I do, but it's just the way that the society structure. It's a patriarchy, so being a man, you sort of unconsciously take advantage of that privilege. So that's all. Sorry. So that sort of helped. The women in the unit were always portrayed with like, this is not going to work. Maybe we can do it this way. Producer Poonam Deol was also there on set, which was a new experience for me. And last film, the producer was not there on set, but it was good she was there. Her inputs were also very important, and that really helped us making a little bit more tender. But most of it was due to the way the characters portrayed, the actors portrayed their characters. Both of them, they're just such benign souls, that you cannot help but feel, that they cannot do it any other way but tenderly.
I'm a film student, so I'm like trying to make films and stuff. So like the worst part about, no, not the worst part, but the most, I won't say hard, but tiring part is getting your film funded. Okay, so like I just want to ask you, how did you pitch this film?
Everything in this film just just fit in, exactly when I wanted things to happen, things happen. So I met Poonam in Bombay, and she heard the story once. She's not Assamese, she's from Punjab. She's Punjabi, and she lives in South Bombay. So as far removed from Assam as you can imagine. But she got the story, she put her hand in her heart and said, I'm doing this. So it's so easy, but it's not like this. Normally, like for my next film, I'm still struggling to, get the funding in. I know it'll be a long struggle, but at least now I'm better prepared. So Aamis is an outlet. It's not the norm. That, अरे ये idea सोचा, पैसा भी आ गया, shoot भी कर लिया. It was like a dream for a filmmaker, but I know ये फिर से दोबारा नहीं होगा मेरी life में. So I would not take that example to say that that the toughest part of raising funds is the toughest part of filmmaking, because actually it is not. And I'm not just saying because it is a tough part. The toughest part is to convince yourself that this is worth telling.
This is worth making. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you and but at that point it's just you and your story. And if you're not confident about this story, if you're not passionate about it, other people can see through it. That ये तो career बनाने के लिए बना रहा है ये film. Because first films are very, very important. It sort of defines the direction you take. So you have to put everything in it, and it has to be something that you are really, really wanting to tell to people. It's not just a crime thriller बनाता हूँ यार, crime thriller बनाता हूँ और एक horror film बनाता हूँ. So it has to really come from within you. So I think those things are the tougher parts of filmmaking. Trying to figure out a subject like this, which you're really, really passionate about, and you have a vision for telling this story, which others may have also done. Doesn't matter. This is your vision of telling the same story. So that's the tough part.
One thing which I loved, I will just like to tell this. So I think what I loved basically in this movie was, I have watched a couple of movies which are on the cannibalism aspect, but most of these movies will show you, the person post discovery of being a cannibal. But the part that I loved of this movie was that how she gradually discovers that she loves this, like she has this different self. And not just on the cannibalism part. I think the second part was how she rediscovers love. So there are very small scenes, like for example, the first time when she walks her to her house after she has checked his friend, she forgets her own house. Like खुद ही बोल के कि मेरा घर चला गया पीछे. So like very small scene where you see that those small like वो teen romanticism जो होता है, she rediscovers her in herself, and along with that she discovers this cannibalism of growing in herself so gradually. I really loved both these things running parallelly in the movie. My question is, are there any scenes or any particular shots that you feel that should have been in the final movie, but they didn't make it to in this like journey?
Well, there were a lot of scenes which were omitted due to time. After all, I know we got the funding fairly easily for this film, but still we had very little money. So certain scenes had to be omitted, which is okay. Which is okay. I think it just made it's a sort of counterfeit. I would have shot certain things differently, definitely. But there is no such thing that I think that is missing from the film. Otherwise we would have got it done. We would have planned a reshoot and gotten those. There were some shots missing in the sequence where she was explaining to him why she, what she feels like towards the end when they're walking back from the hospital. So I thought some shots, we needed some particular kind of shots which we didn't have, which we didn't take. So we scheduled another small 10-day schedule and took the shots. So things like that, yeah. Just pretty typical stuff, but nothing like major which I thought should have been there.
What really spoke to me, which was very interesting to me, was the dream sequence, Sumon's dream sequence. And I think, I don't know, it would have been, you could have tried to make it a little more sensual or rather sexual, but I really liked how you portrayed that whole, somewhere it makes me think how it is somewhere in between. Maybe it's not completely romantic, not completely platonic, but it's somewhere in between. So could you please elaborate a little on that?
Well, frankly, I was not really happy with the way it came out. I know people love that sequence, so I just say and I move on. But if you were to ask me honestly, I thought we could have done something better. The original idea was to do something with a bathtub. Riju, my camera person, we were discussing one night. So what I do is, when I shoot a film, I make sure that the DOP is staying with me, so that all the time, because he's such an important person, he or she, on set. So you keep discussing ideas with that person, and he was suggesting doing something with water, having him emerge or something. I'm pretty much forgetting the details. So we actually got this huge bathtub lugged from somewhere else, to where we were shooting. We painted it black because Riju already painted black and then filled with water. And that to dark water, so we put a lot of chai patti in it, and all kinds of things were happening, and all was supposed to come out of there or something. And we were supposed to, and the water was supposed to be a reflection of the video of her face, so it was supposed to be something crazy like that, because when I initially wrote the scene, it was supposed to be a dreamy scene where he enters a room and there's a bed and she's there, and it is, so you're right, it was supposed to be a little bit more sensual. But that didn't really work out because I thought, when I was discussing the scene with my team, they felt it is too, we've seen scenes like this, so we really didn't know till 2-3 days before that shot was supposed to be taken exactly how are we going to do this. And Riju, and we were staying in this small guest house, and all of us were given mosquito nets. So Riju had a pink mosquito net. So one morning he wakes up and says, "Let's shoot this thing through a mosquito net." So we took his mosquito net, and we sort of tried experimenting with it, projecting video on it, and putting audio inside it, and it looked good. But I was still not satisfied. But I thought, look, now we don't have time. So like these guys gave me enough time. I couldn't think of an option. So this looks good. Let's go with it. And a lot of the scene's final effect, what you feel, is because of the editor's intervention. She edited the sequence in such a way that it made it look more dreamy. We had small bits of VFX in it also. So that's how we came out with the final scene.
In one of the scene where Sumon, he just asked ki, there are certain different places where you get some meat, but they don't might be very much fresh and this thing. But she says ki, the answer she gets from Dr. Nirali is that I'll go anywhere to eat good meat. So this same thing didn't actually click me in the first watch, but while watching a second time, I actually try to understand what kind of a character it might turn. So my question is, while writing the character, especially for Dr. Nirali, Lima Das, so I mean, many of the directors have met some of the actors, and according to them, they try to write, or you can say articulate and make a structure. But what was your process casting Lima Das ji, as well as trying not to over sexualize, but still the male gaze is there?
Definitely, the element of sexuality is there throughout the film. This is a romance. This is not a mother-daughter relationship love. This is like like hardcore heterosexual romance happening. So obviously, sex is a huge element in that. And we could have, which was very easy for us, to like sort of, do scenes where she's a little bit less clothed or whatever. Like, but as I was telling someone else in this conversation only, we just wanted this to be the gaze to be more female than male. So all those things were out. And I realized that the power of suggestion is such that you do not need to show anything. And in Lima, we had an actor with her eyes, she can, sort of just make a man feel like, many things. So I told her to play it like that. Don't try to, be sexy just because there's a young guy, you're with. Just be yourself, and just talk the way you do. And if you meet Lima in person, that is just the way she is. She talks like that, and it really helped because if I had cast an actor who had already done films, I don't think this would have worked. This character would have worked because in Assam, nobody had seen her before, nor or. And this is a Romeo and Juliet kind of template. So you had to cast fresh actors. And I just got super lucky with both of them, actually, frankly. So so that's how it's not like we were not trying to titillate through a character, but I knew even when we were doing it that men will get titillated by her performance, even though she's doing nothing sexual.
I just had one small moment I wanted to share from one time that bachpan mein I had gone to Nagaland once. So मेरे family में किसी ने को मस्ती में बोला कि you will never find any dogs in Nagaland. I'm like, ऐसे कैसे, मतलब यहाँ कोई मतलब क्यों नहीं होते? So बोलते यहाँ सब dogs खा लेते हैं. And like that really scarred me as a kid because like growing up in a vegetarian background who has recently started eating eggs and like matlab, I surely have my double standards. Like where do I draw the line between what's morally correct and what's morally ethically wrong to eat or not? But like that really scarred me at that point. Shit, I'm never coming back to Nagaland. I haven't really gone back to Nagaland, separate reason, but still like it really, I think one thing that like this is a random thought only, that I think one thing that the film really does not answers, but really does in terms of asking us unique questions, unique and really important questions about what's morality, what's conventional wisdom, and like where should we draw the line between what's morally correct, what's morally eatable, and what's edible and what's not edible. Like where do you draw the line? I mean, it's good that it doesn't ask any, it doesn't answer everything. It leaves a lot of room for us to question these things. But I think that's the beauty of the film as well. And thank you so much for making this film because of that. This one really quick question about what's been one of the best appreciations or applauses that you have got from the film? Like any specific person you would like to talk about कि यार इनका मुझे बात याद रहा था इन्होंने जब मुझे कुछ appreciate किया था इस film के बारे में. Something specific you remember somebody had told you about the film. Could be a critique as well.
Well, many people have met me and normally obviously say nice things only. Very few people come to me and say, that actually there was this one old lady in Tribeca who came out of the hall shouting that they're eating each other. And I was sitting next to, and my publicist, Ted was there, and he tweeted it out. So there was a lot of buzz in Tribeca. What kind of film is this? So that is so I don't know. Some people get very emotional. It's happened a lot in my first film also. People get emotional, and some of them have tears in their eyes. So it just makes you choke up also, because as an artist, if you can get that out of somebody, a stranger, but something that you have made, it's quite pleasing and satisfactory feeling.
Yeah, I think the film made a commentary on, like, it had a completely different meaning about you are what you eat. मतलब उसका एक पूरा अलग ही rendition provide कर दिया film में. Like, and also like about how the metaphor of food, also forbidden food, was similar to how forbidden love also sort of works. But really quickly, I would like to do a small rapid fire with you. We know we have 6-7 minutes, so I want to capitalize on that as well. We don't want to waste any of that as well. But so, okay, what I'll do is I'll ask simple questions. You can answer as quickly as possible.
Sure.
They're not necessarily about the film, about you as well. So what is the first film you remember watching in a theater as a kid?
Oh man, I know it was a Mithun Chakravarti film, because I was into fight films. This is the 80s. So if the film didn't have fighting, I didn't want to see it. Not interested. So I was about 10 or 7. I don't know. So it was a Mithun film for sure. I don't remember the name.
Okay. I mean, not a great start, but definitely that's also important to go through, and then you realize then's when you start making choices differently. And but what are three filmmakers that have sort of and their films that you would like us to also watch and that have influenced you the most, you feel, in your filmmaking style?
I wouldn't say I would say I have 3 gurus in life. I call them gurus. So they're all artists. So they're not all filmmakers. I would say I have been influenced most by Stephen King, the writer, in the way he tells his stories. Then there's this comedian philosopher called George Carlin. I am a huge bhakt of his stand-up. And then there's Kurt Cobain, because in my formative years, in my teens, Kurt was big, and then he shot himself. But I sort of got so much out of his music, and I think it has really defined me, the kind of work I do.
That's lovely. I think the spectrum you cover in terms of not just specifically about films, but like काफी कुछ you have covered in terms of just understanding the world by अलग-अलग art forms के through. So the next question I had was, what was that one reality check you got when you shifted from watching films to making films? One reality check that you got.
That I don't know anything. And I don't know anything, and I have to start from scratch. Just because I have a degree in film doesn't mean I'm a filmmaker. And the kind of training you get on a set, even if it's a documentary set, is completely different from what I teach you in academia. So that was one, with this reality check I got, and so of course, I was lucky to work with people who guided me through the whole thing. Experienced camera people, sound people. So yeah.
Okay. And what is that one thing that people from different parts of the country and the world should and try to know and explore more about Assamese culture, and not just that, and more in specific regards to its art, in not just films, but like just different forms of art about Assam that people don't really know about or should know more about, according to you?
So there's several things. One is the Assamese classical dance form Kotria. It's not very well known, but it is a classical form, just like Kuchipudi is, or Bharatanatyam is, Kathak is. Lima Das, the person who acted in Aamis, she is actually quite a well-known proponent of this dance form. So that's one thing you can explore. You can look at the cultural hub of Majuli. Majuli is this big river island in the middle of the Brahmaputra, which is the seat of our Vaishnavite, Hindu culture in Assam. And also, so all these forms of theater, community theater. One is called Bhavna, which is like dance drama, but at a very panchayat village level thing. So it's very interesting ways of telling stories from the myths, Mahabharata, Ramayana. So these there are many things out there. There's mobile theater. Mobile theater. I don't think you guys have heard of, but basically, it can make you fabulously wealthy in Assam. Because actors get paid about 70 to 80 lakhs per season. So these are these theatrical productions which travel from village to village performing, during season. And along with them, they take 5-6 trucks of equipment, chairs, tent, tambu material, and the village panchayat will call them. They'll pay them a fixed amount. They'll perform their play, and it's tremendously popular, and very interesting. They do very interesting things. They stage epics like Godzilla and Titanic. So it's quite crazy, and not people have seen it outside Assam.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. I think just one last question I wanted to ask you was, what is that one thing as a filmmaker you would like to tell all of us as consumers of cinema that we don't understand, or like, yaar, tum log ko, like, or just that how should we as consumers of cinema try to appreciate cinema better, according to you? How can we do that?
I don't know, man. I don't know what to say to that, except I would just say that, it always helps if you don't have to explain everything to an audience. So what I mean is, if there's some little bit of cinema literacy in society, it helps in broadening your vision, because otherwise, the impulse to handhold everything, अरे यार ये audience समझेगा नहीं यार, आपको ये scene डालना पड़ेगा. So, then that limits your creativity. So if you know that your audience is switched on, at least some basic literacy they have in cinema, it always helps, and it's obviously a greater pleasure, because the challenge is to stump these kind of audiences too, rather than the mass audience which we have. We just go to the film for entertainment, and just keep watching good films. Try to make your own. Like I think some author said that everybody in the world has one good book inside them. I would say that everybody in this world, thanks to mobile phone cameras, has one good film inside them. So try to make a film on your own, just for yourself.